Hello, everybody. It's another episode of Off the Mark with the Bickersteins. I'm Mark in Off the Mark.
And I'm Kathy. And in this episode, we're talking accessibility.
Closed captions, alternate text, and of course, Camelcase are all great ways to ensure your content, your social media content is being seen by everyone. Wait a second. What Camelcase?
I know. I don't know what Camelcase is.
You know, we really should read we should come to rehearsal or read the scripts at least.
Is there a rehearsal? Oh, I didn't know.
I
would attend.
So let's find out. Let's turn to our trusty producer, Casey Rubin, and she can explain to us what Camelcase is.
What is Camelcase? Sounds technical.
Yeah, so in relation to social media, Camelcase is specifically in hashtags. If you're using a phrase or that has multiple words in it, you want to capitalize the first letter of each word so that it's easier to distinguish between the words.
So if you have go for it, the G,
the F,
and the I.
Is that a new thing? I mean, I do that anyway. I've been Camelcasing for a long time. I just didn't know there was a name for it.
I always said that about you. I always said she is.
I'm a good Camelcaser.
Excellent in Camelcase.
But I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know there was a word for it, let's just say. But
there's a word for everything.
Well, I need to know a lot of words.
The question is, how many times can we bring it up in upcoming conversations? How many times can we drop Camelcase and see what people say? I know what they're going to say, but never mind. All right. So thank you, Casey.
Thank you. Now I know I can sound smarter when I talk. Instead of saying capitalize the G, the F, and the I, I'll just say Camelcase it, dude.
Camelcase. Get on it. All right. And the point being that anyone should be able, see, I didn't come to rehearsal either.
Anyone should be able to interact with your business content. And it's your responsibility, the business owner, the business, the corporation, to ensure that your content is accessible to all.
And here's a good point. 15%.
Do you think people know that?
No, I think, we get a question. I'm going to ask a question of our guest, and she may not have the answer because it's a difficult question and I'm having my own problems getting answers to it. But do websites need to be ADA compliant? I think they do, but does every website have to be ADA compliant? So that it's to do what you can, at least with your social media. You're going to reach out to 15% of the world's population lives with some kind of disability. That's according to the World Health Organization. If you can reach 15% more people, why not? It makes more sense. Which is
why, if you are not practicing inclusive design, there's a lot of potential customers that you're not reaching. So there you go. 15%.
So
hey, if people could increase their customer base by 15% or 5%, people would be happy.
Yeah, if you could up your profits, 10%, that's a good day, right? It's a good year. So with us today is Nichelle Roberts. She's the account coordinator at Siren Communications. Nichelle wrote a very interesting piece for PR Daily on inclusivity and accessibility in your online content. We are glad to have her join us today, and we have lots of questions for her.
Hi, Nichelle. So thanks so much for joining us. We're excited to talk about accessibility and what creative inclusivity means for the PR industry and for the companies we serve, really.
Thank you so much for having me on the show today. Really appreciate it. And I'm excited for this discussion.
I think this is an important topic that maybe a lot of people don't understand and don't know about. So you're here to enlighten us.
So, well, first of all, before we get into the accessibility, why am I having a hard time saying that word?
I don't know.
Well, let's just chalk it down that I will have a hard time saying that word. Tell us a little bit about Siren Communications and your role there.
Definitely. So Siren, we're a full service public relations agency. And typically we specialize in travel and tourism, but we've also worked for clients in the hospitality and consumer goods fields. So my role right now is as an account supervisor. And, as with all agencies, your role kind of changes day to day, client to client. So it can go anywhere from social media marketing and influencer relations to kind of communications plans and strategies.
Do you get to test out the different destinations? Do you have, they force you to go to these different places and check out the facilities and, the pool, the bar, the sun.
I love how you say force you, like it's so awful.
Yes, they're demanding that you go.
Yeah, no, I definitely have. I actually returned from being Barbados the last 7 months, so that was a great experience. And now that travel's kind of changed a bit, it's interesting to see what it's like now versus what it was before.
That is a good gig.
Yeah, I think that's good. So how did you first become familiar with accessible social media content?
I think it started in March of 2020. I was taking a course in user experience or UX design. And one of the topics that they just go over is accessibility. So basically, it's typically for web design and apps, but I felt it lent itself really well to communications. Because, as communicators, our first kind of goal is clear and concise communications. And accessibility in that realm is all about reaching as many people as possible, regardless of their diverse backgrounds.
So you was there a specific moment when it all just gelled for you and you went, this really makes sense? You said you took a class, but I mean, did you start doing it and go, wow, look, we're getting better responses, we're getting more engagement, or was it just any moment that really the light went on?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it was after I was going over the practices for web and design, I was like, a lot of this is so good for social media, because at the time I was running a social media account for one of our clients, and I was like, I can implement these day to day very easily into the practices that we're trying to do. And social media is all about community building, and the first thing about accessibility or inclusive design is understanding your audience. So again, you could see the connection there.
So what are the exact ADA rules when it comes to websites and making sure they're compliant? Obviously, we're very familiar with companies, to make our buildings, accessible, and, ramps, and when you have stairs and so on and so forth. But are there specific rules, and do enough companies know about them?
But is there a similar law in Canada? You're joining us from Toronto. That's similar to ADA in the States, and you're talking mostly about social media, but this would apply to websites. That websites need to be ADA compliant that you know of, and do they have the same kind of regulations in Canada?
Yeah, I mean, when I talk about ADA, I'm talking about, originally it started in the US, but Canadians do kind of use the practice as well. And then there's also kind of the web content accessibility guidelines that, both Canada and the States use. And when you basically mean like ADA compliance, it just means that your website is accessible to as many people as possible, regardless of their diverse backgrounds, so regardless of age, abilities, and so forth. And it's a guideline of it's a checklist of about 50 things. So I won't go into all of them, but for brevity's sake, basically what they ask you is that you're full compliant with the WCAG 2.1 AA, which basically WCAG is an acronym that stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And then 2, you have an accessibility summary. So it's basically a summary of, or condensed version of, your accessibility policy.
So what does that mean in practice? Does that mean you have to have some sort of people can hear what's written on the website? Does that mean?
Or if you have videos that the script comes up, or, what are some of those things?
Yeah, so like in practice, it would be kind of offering alt text on your photos. So if a photo doesn't load properly on a website, you have alt text that describes what this photo would have been if it wasn't there. Ensuring that your website is legible for screen readers, making sure that you're not using certain colors for people with color blindness, and so forth. And it's kind of broken down into 4 basic principles. So perceivability, operability, understandable, and robust. And essentially what all those means is that someone can seamlessly go on your website and have a good experience and not run into a lot of pain points.
Does that apply for every website out there? Or is there a size of your corporation or your business, or does everybody have to have all of that?
That's a good question. And I think in Canada, I know all websites as of January of this year had to be compliant with WCAG 2.1. I'm not sure about the States. I think in the States, it's not a law, but they recommend that you are.
And what are consumers looking for when it comes to inclusivity?
I think, I was reading a good article the other day in Forbes by Sonia Thompson, and she was saying that consumers are really looking for like customer intimacy. And I think that stuck with me because, we want to build communities, and to build a community, you really need to understand your audience and who you're speaking to. So they want to know that you have a deep understanding of them, similar to an understanding you would have of a significant partner or a best friend and so forth. So I think to do that, you kind of have to recognize where your lack of knowledge lies and kind of educate yourself or become aware.
And how's the best way for companies to do that? Is that with like, I guess, communicating with their audience, hearing, listening and reading their comments, right? But is there polls, or like, how do companies, what's some of the best ways that companies can go about doing that?
I think you said it best. The best way is feedback from your audience. And again, you can use social media for this feedback. So, you might do a poll on social media to ask your audience, like, what frustrations do they have, or what kind of content would they like to consume or see more of, and how are they consuming your content, or what are the pain points in their consumption?
Is there backlash to this? I mean, we're going to get into many of your recommendations next, but the interwebs can be very, could be a rough audience, a rough crowd.
I never go to the comment section of anything. Like where it's like, if you want to live in a negative space, just go to the comment section. It could be an article about puppies and rainbows, and the comment section somehow will like turn it into like tornadoes and end of world crap.
But could it be seen as by some, I don't know, too woke or whatever people were going to find.
Oh yeah, you can't be woke. You can't be educated and woke in this country anyway. I don't know about in Canada, but we cannot be woke here.
Yeah, I mean, I think when companies miss the mark is that they just don't understand the consumer, and it's going to happen. You can't be an expert in everything in every field. And I think you have to kind of identify that if you don't have a firsthand experience in something, you're going to mess up at some point, probably. But it's just taking that feedback, actually listening to it and implementing stronger practices.
But I think that's also, if you have a relationship with your customer, your consumer, your client, they know that you're not perfect, right? I mean, they'll forgive you as long as you're transparent. They see you're trying, you're making an effort, right? I mean, it's not about perfection. It's about building the relationship, getting the feedback, listening to it, doing the best you can.
This sounds like our marriage.
Yeah.
I'm trying, hon.
Let's take some surveys, actually.
Let's see what they're saying in the comment. Let's see what they're saying in the comment section.
We'll ask Nichelle to take a survey and help us here. But yeah, I mean, don't you think they forgive, like, if you and that's about having that audience. You're so funny. Anyway.
No, I definitely agree. I feel like, we're human. We know that, you're going to make mistakes. But as long as you're actually showing the effort that you want to try to progress, I think there is some forgiveness.
We're talking with Nichelle Roberts with Siren Communications in Toronto, and she's written a very interesting article for PR Daily, why and how to use inclusive design for social media. And so let's get into some of the nitty gritty here. So you mentioned a number of ways to be inclusive. The first idea is to provide a description or alternative text when posting. Take us through that. What does that mean? How do you do that? And does it take a lot of extra time? But let's go first with what it is.
So basically, alternative text or alt text is just descriptive text that screen readers read. So it doesn't take a lot of time because you're just basically explaining what's in the photo. So if it's a photo, of a girl by a tree, you say like, this is a girl by a tree in a pink shirt, XYZ. You could be as descriptive as you like to kind of get that context across.
Is there other, so is the alt text for those photos, is that just the screen readers that are reading that? That's not any of the SEO spiders and stuff like that that are also reading that?
I've actually heard a few people say that on Instagram specifically, if you use alt text, it kind of boosts, it picks up keywords and your post will be boosted, kind of like if you were to add hashtags to your post.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've heard. And I mean, we do it regardless. And I don't know that I've seen a difference because of that, but I've definitely, we do it regardless.
Yeah, I'm thinking it seems like good practice, obviously, but hey, if you get an extra bump from it from SEO, then you're doing the right thing for an audience that needs it in order to understand the context. And then if there's an extra plus, it may just talk more bosses or CEOs or whatever into letting their employees or having their employees or making it standard operating procedure. And is that what needs to happen? Do companies need that to become in their social media sort of like a standard operating procedure or part of their policies or something? How do you get this like from these are the rules to a company actually doing it on a day-to-day basis? Do you have suggestions, or do you do this for your companies and the clients that you work with? How does it get implemented?
Okay, I get you. I think for myself, I've kind of done the background on this, so I do it automatically for clients. But I think if someone wasn't knowledgeable and a company wanted to implement it, it's very simple. I think a lot of softwares or even the platforms offer these practices. So I know when you're uploading something on social media and you're using a scheduler, they'll have a segment that says alt text. So it's just filling in little suggestions and following along, and you could do it without even knowing.
Oh, great. So, and this is on Instagram, Facebook, I don't know, Snapchat, TikTok, any of those too?
Yeah. So like all the platforms, and then also Instagram, even now for stories, you can add captions to your video and it will just automatically generate it. So platforms already have them on there. It's just the onus is on us to go look for them.
Does it ever come down to a point where you might switch a picture because it's easier to describe, or a picture is harder to describe, or does it ever alter or impact the decisions you make on the content?
That's a really good question. I personally don't feel like it alters like the content that I use. I think it just makes me more aware of how the words that I'm using to describe the photo. And I think as communicators, we want to be as clear and concise as possible.
And you mentioned video these days. And I think you said Instagram. Is with Instagram and with like YouTube, is it something you just turn on and they turn around and can transcribe it for you? And then do you have to go through and I mean, I'm sure Google and Instagram's like Siri, they tend to make mistakes sometimes on the typing. I don't know, but is it pretty simple to do, and how do you go about doing it?
I've seen some pretty funny automated captions populated, and you're like, this is so far off from what I was trying to say. So you have to kind of go over what they've populated, because sometimes it's not even close to what you're trying to say. So you could do it manually. So that just means like writing it out yourself, or you can generate it and then go in and change it. Depending on the platform, some will let you change, some don't let you change. Like Instagram doesn't let you change if you're using it on stories. Facebook allows you to go in and adjust.
Okay. And what about like YouTube? Does that have something? And is that something suggested too for YouTube? Does it have an automated transcriber or whatever?
Yeah, YouTube actually does have it. And then it's it's an option that you can turn on for videos. So it might not automatically be there, but if it's offered, you could just use a closed caption button.
Great. Well, it's good that these.
And do you actually go back and fix the screw ups that they have in there, or do you just leave it be and say, look, they'll get the idea here, it's important to get this posted?
Yeah, I think if it's really far off, I do it manually. I find it's easier because when it's automated, it could be really far off and then you're going in and changing. So I think it's faster just do it manually, do it yourself. So you just know right away it's good to go.
So that's for closed captioning. For video, now you talk about hashtagging. and you say you should write multi-word hashtags in Camelcase. And we had a lot of fun trying to figure out what Camelcase is. And it turns out it's a great word. Explain to us what Camelcase is. We also had Casey, our producer, to explain it. But tell us what we're supposed to do there and what Camelcase is and why.
Yeah, so Camelcase, kind of like the back of the humps of a camel, they go up and down. You'd be capitalizing the first letter of every word.
I have always done that in hashtags because I can't read, like you see some of those hashtags that are like, I don't know, bricks long, and you're like, huh? And then you try to read it, and sometimes you can read it different ways, like it's not supposed to be read. So I've always done it just for my own little brain to conceive, but I didn't know it was a thing.
Yeah,
That's good.
So if you have the word hashtag, so you would capitalize H and you would capitalize T.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's Camelcase. Where did you find that word? That's what I'm more interested in. I want to know where you heard that word first.
It's the term that was used if you kind of look into like accessibility practices for hashtags. That's the word that they use, Camelcase.
I know.
And the reason to do it is just like Kathy said, it makes it easier for, she calls it her little brain, but for anybody's brain, everybody's brain, it just makes it.
I'm assuming everybody else has a little bigger brain.
And I think that, that's sort of, it's almost like a metaphor for everything you're doing. It's like, it's not that hard to do. You're communicating better.
And it's
you're
intuitive.
finding a better way.
It really is kind of intuitive to do anyway, because it doesn't really make sense to have a bunch of letters all squished together and not have them separated by something, because it's just easier. It's like, it's like those brain tricks where they have all those paragraphs or whatever, and they say you can skim it and really read the context, even though the words are missing. I could very easily skim hashtags and or things all connected if you had Camelcase. Anyway.
Definitely.
No, it's cool. It's a cool idea. Yeah.
So one of your next tips is use inclusive language. What are the best tips for that? And just in case, here's what you wrote. I'm going to read some of what you wrote about. When writing copy, evaluate your text for bias and assumptions of limited points of view. Use plain people first language and avoid jargon. But more importantly, stick to gender neutral terms, avoid ableist language, and don't downplay the impact of mental disabilities. Whenever possible, avoid saying click here, and instead use descriptive call to actions such as sign up, read more, or subscribe. So can you explain that a little bit more? Give us some examples.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I feel like this, might not come at like firsthand. This is something that you will have to do a little bit more digging into, definitely for myself as well. So you just want to make sure that the language that you're using is inclusive, and it's not, so you have to recognize exclusion in your writing. And I think it also kind of goes with not just like abilities, but also maybe people that are learning a new language. So I know I was running a social media account for our client who's based in Montreal, and we write in French and English. And I was running a contest, and the guidelines were be the first person to correctly guess the name of this hotel and you'll win a prize. And someone, after I concluded the contest, someone DM'd me and they were like, hey, I was the first person, why didn't I win? And I was like, yeah, you were the first person, but you didn't guess correctly. And I realized then that, the language I was using, to me, I understood it. And I thought, like people will grasp at this, but I didn't realize that not everybody, especially if, and he let me know that English wasn't his first language. So he was kind of confused, and he put the emphasis on the first and not correct. You kind of have to like recognize the language you use.
I just thought of something. You're in Toronto. Do you have to do a lot of things in French as well? Do you have to do postings in both languages? Yeah.
Got it. And when you say gender neutral, so does that mean there's certain pronouns that we should just not use anymore?
I mean, I think that's, it's just kind of like not saying like, hey guys, or mankind, ladies, stuff like that, not using that kind of terminology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. You don't even think of like like you said, hey guys. When I say, hey guys, I don't think I'm talking to a guy. I just think I'm talking to anybody who's in front of me. Hey guys, because I do it a
don't
lot,
use
right?
I don't use hey guys.
Well, if
'cause
I were to
it's-
talk to our
'cause-
team.
Yeah, because then we start seeing that on emails to clients, and then
No,
you're
no, no,
like,
no, 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 not
I
in
don't want hey guys going out to the
no,
clients.
not in an email. But if I were to speak to our team, I may say, hey guys, what do you think about this? But I don't even think of like guys as like is supposed to really be, and and you're the only male. So you don't think of it as there's so many things that you have to think about that you
Other
could be
guys on the
offensive.
team.
Well, yeah, I know, but most of the time you're the only guy in the room with a bunch us
You
ladies.
can't say girls.
With
See, you're gonna
with us
you're gonna have to
people.
work very hard.
I have to work very hard
to get
yeah.
better at this.
Anyway, yeah, but so that's interesting that you said that, especially, I mean, it may be one thing if you're talking to your internal team, right? And they know what I'm talking about. But if you're on a social media post and you're trying to be casual conversation and you say that, those are things you have to think about. Or, or if like, let's say you're a fashion blogger and you're talking about dresses, you know what I mean? And or nail polish or something. And you say, hey ladies, there's a new color out there. Well, Harry Styles, wears nail polish like nobody's business. So,
Okay,
let
me interpret this. Our daughter she's a stylist.
She's a blogger, but that's just one example.
So that's why all roads lead to Harry Styles wearing.
No, I'm just
polish.
saying that's one example of those are really things you have to think about that you don't think about unless you have somebody like Nichelle telling us, and letting everybody know these are like don't do that. Interesting.
Yeah, a lot of the language we say it's like the default, and we don't mean anything by it, but it can be biased in some sense. So it takes a lot of learning and kind of recognizing the exclusion.
Do you find that most people like are most companies, I feel like corporations sometimes are ahead of like people even because they realize that they have to be.
Mitt Romney would tell you corporations are people.
Well, I know.
Okay.
I get that. But I see like there are corporations now that are finally doing things, at least here in America, that are ahead of where some of the politicians are. And I think it's probably because, they like a lot of corporations are way more environmentally concerned and looking at their, carbon footprint. And, some politicians in America aren't there yet, but they have to, it's part of the same thing. They have to pay attention to who their audience is. And a large part of their audience, and especially if you're trying to get to a younger generation, because that's what the younger generation really cares about. And the younger generation, I find, is also much more woke or aware and educated about all these things. Would you agree with that?
Oh, no, I would definitely agree. I feel like, things are changing and people want to see more diversity and inclusion and, across the board, whether it's campaigns or on social media. And they feel more connected when they see that, diversity and inclusion is there. So if we really want to build these communities and we really want to communicate as clear as possible, this is definitely.
Yeah. So do you need to be implementing all methods of inclusive design in order to be effective?
I feel like the more you use, the better. And just implementing a few is a good start. I personally don't know about, I think you should be doing all, but obviously, it's something that it's ever changing. So, I think the more, the better. It's kind of just, it's a little bit harder, a little bit harder to kind of explain, but I think to grasp it, it's just recognizing that not everybody has the same abilities and you're not making the same assumption.
So you wouldn't say, get up out of your chair and run down to the store before everything sells out, right? I mean, something that just came to mind. I hope I'm not using ableist language, but to use it as an example, something like that, because everybody can't get up and get out of their chair.
That would be ableist language. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was so happy I thought of something that I stumbled over the rest.
Yeah. So you have to think about, am I explaining this in a way that everybody could do it?
Exactly.
That takes, you gotta
Yeah, this is melding your mind, not melding your, but this is a little mind blowing. This is you have to think broader, differently. Are you going to start telling everybody to implement some of these ideas?
yeah, I'm just gonna introduce them to Nichelle. My brain, though, the problem
She's
is
going to walk out to the office here and say, "Hey guys,
hey guys, don't do this anymore. Oh crap. I just screwed up. Yeah, that's probably what I would do. So
you point out Molly Burke, who's a motivational speaker and YouTuber, and is that a good place to go look at some of her posts and get a better idea of what we're talking about here?
Definitely. And I love that you bring up Molly Burke, because I feel like when I was writing the article, I wanted to make sure that I included voices that had a firsthand experience when it comes to inaccessibility. So I turned to, advocates like Molly Burke and stuff. So I think one of the practices, I know we were talking earlier, how can companies do this if they have no pre-existing knowledge of accessibility? And that's just by following people in that realm and kind of listening to their pain points and what they say is best practice.
So tell us about Molly Burke. Who is she, and what does she talk about? And if you follow her, what are you going to learn?
Yeah. So Molly Burke is in the social media realm, and she just talks about her experience with accessible. Well, I mean, not she does like lifestyle content, but I mean, one of the things that she does promote on her platform is her experience with inaccessible content.
Oh, got it. And does she have? Does she have a disability?
Yes, she does. She does.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, so she's giving you a firsthand experience of some of the barriers that she has to overcome in order to get the full context of whatever content she may be absorbing.
Yeah, definitely. And you'll see if you follow her in her captions, she does photo descriptions to kind of let screen readers kind of identify what the photo is about.
Now, Kathy made a good point here about corporations being ahead. And is this more important for, yes, it's important for all audiences, but would it be more important for a younger audience or Gen X or
is it super important for different companies? Like maybe if you're I'm trying to think, you're a mom and pop, I have no idea. I'm not good at like if you're selling anything on the internet, widgets, you know what I mean? Then obviously you could have a global audience, and in your audience is made up of everyone under the sun, right? But if you are I don't know, a farmer or something, and you're in a small community, does it make it that much of a difference? I mean, is it certain companies that it's more important for them to do, or it's just like everybody should do it because you never know? You just never, disabilities aren't always seen. You know what I mean?
I think definitely big companies should definitely be doing it because you have a larger audience and consumer base, and you want to reach a large audience. But I think it should, across the board, it's not like, oh, they should do it more and small mom and pops shouldn't do it at all, or they shouldn't even care, or it's not on their radar, because you never know who within your community, like you said, some disabilities aren't visible. So you never know who in your community might need this, or who in your community might even appreciate it.
Yeah, because it's not like if somebody is colorblind, you're not going to be able to tell if they're colorblind by looking at them. Well, maybe you can because.
Well, she talked about some colors you shouldn't use, and that got my mind thinking. Like, do I really not? I mean, some colors really make a difference, in social. I mean, and then.
So, what color shouldn't you use?
Probably brown, and what are the colors that brown, green?
I think I was asking Nichelle, although thank you for answering.
I just made that up, but aren't those the colors that when people are colorblind, and those are the ones that really give people trouble?
Yeah, I think it's blue green. And I, feel free to jump in if I'm wrong, but I believe it's blue green that you shouldn't use, that a lot of people have difficulties with.
Wow, blue. Is it any kind of blue or just because blue is like a big color for everything? That's like a happy color.
That's what
Every
I'm talking
medical.
about. So what, at what point do you say it's important to do this exclusivity to make this inclusive, but I also need to make it inclusive for the other 85%. So, at what point do you start weighing the option? I think, and I've asked that a few times, but now I'm asking it again.
I think it falls, like the colors that you should or shouldn't use more falls under when you're making infographics, not so much a general photo on social media. So that's kind of where that falls in. So like if you're doing an infographic, obviously you wouldn't want text in those do not use colors, because then people will have difficulty. And also you want to have a contrast between your text and your background color or images. Like it's more so for communicative graphics.
Got it. That's just good for us old people too. You have no idea.
Who are you talking about?
Me, the young people here, they'll do like the contrast, or they'll put white letters on black. And I'm like,
oh yeah.
Whoa, I cannot see that. I have no idea what's going on. Like I'm
white letters on black, you can't see.
Well, it depends. It has to be a certain way. I mean, if it's huge, you can, but there's certain contests that I think are, younger eyes can see things better. And I'm like, guys, you got to be designing websites for, once you hit 50, your eyes change. So anyway, that's one thing that these young web designers, you've been on these web copy where the web copy, you're like, can I have a magnifying glass, the font size?
Yeah.
But also,
that's exactly your point. If you can't read it because your eyes aren't, imagine what other people have.
I know. That's like fascinating.
Oh, so now it strikes home to you because
it strikes home. Well,
now it's important.
No, it's been important all along. But I'm saying I understand that piece of it. I don't understand all of it. But you don't need to understand.
Did you witness that? She said she doesn't understand all of that.
You don't have to understand it from a first person perspective.
I'm just getting you on the record of saying something
to appreciate it,
admitting to something that you don't understand.
Appreciate it, and B, to recognize its importance. You don't have to understand everything. You shouldn't have to. There's no way you can understand everything from a first person point of view. But so what is the first step that a PR firm should take towards inclusivity and accessibility?
That's a really good question. I feel like the first step is kind of an internal reflection of yourself and the company. So kind of recognizing your biases or the lack of knowledge you may have in certain spheres. And then as a company—
You've already done. Yeah.
What you're doing, which we've done today. I feel like a lot of things that you guys were saying earlier, like the hey guys and stuff, like even something as small as that, just realizing like, oh, I never thought of it that way. And then as companies, it's kind of looking at the practices you have in place and what works, what doesn't work, and what still needs to be achieved and worked on.
So should I really expect more engagement? If I had a client ask me, why are we spending more time doing this? Or even if it doesn't take up much time, I think, it does take up a little extra time. What am I going to tell a client who might be skeptical? They're going to get better engagement. They're going to make more money. The phones are going to ring.
No, I think contacts. You tell them it's the right thing to do, But anyway, go ahead, Nichelle, answer that question.
It is the right thing to do, but I think it's also a matter of, if as communicators or social media marketers, we want to build communities, and you can't build a community if you don't understand your audience, and if you're not kind of catering to their needs, or if you're disregarding their frustrations altogether, like you're not doing what you kind of set out to do. And then besides the fact that, it's a good thing to do, you're building trust, loyalty, and your impact is just so much larger.
You also talked about just, sort of jumping in and doing, that's and trying to do your best or whatever, but will people be insulted if you don't do it all the way? They're kind of half-assing it, and, they're just sort of doing this for show.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess people can kind of tell when you're half-assing it, as you said.
It's a podcast. We can talk that way.
Okay, good.
It's an official marketing term, half-assing.
We're not on the CBC here right now, so.
Yeah, if you're going to half-ass it, don't do it. I would just say, like, there's no point then, because it's going to come off as disingenuous. Really actually care for it and take the time to do it.
I think with most, you know, in the environmental world, they'll call it greenwashing when companies are pretending to be environmentally friendly, and they use the buzzwords, but they're not really doing the hard work to make a big impact. So I guess, you know, and you'll be outed in 5 seconds if you are greenwashing something, meaning you're not being authentic, and you're trying to sell things based on, you know, goodwill that you're not really building because you're fake. So always being authentic and transparent is just a good practice. Because people, I think on social media, people are very quick to out you if you're, you know, I mean, it's just the way it is, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, like you said, people are unforgiving. So if you're not being genuine, like, they're going to out you, and they're going to know.
So
Yeah.
be genuine. Give it, you know, do it for real. Do the best you can.
Yeah. And even if you start small. And the other thing is, Nichelle, I guess we all have to know is no matter what, it's ever changing. So no matter what happens, like, I don't even know, I forget how many genders there are now, but there's a lot. And I don't know all of them, obviously. But things change every day, and you have to just be open-minded. You have to be willing to learn, and willing to try to, you know, be accepting and reach out, and really just educate yourself. Is that what you would say? Because there's not an end, like, oh, I've studied it all and now it's good. We're good. It just, like, things keep changing.
Oh, that's definitely it. It's ever changing. There's always new guidelines coming out. Even with the WCAG 2.1, I think by this year, end of this year, there'll be a 2.2. So, you know, that's another thing that you'll kind of have to look into. So it's never done, but you can always keep kind of educating yourself, keep learning.
Is there any place that people can go that, you know, I mean, besides
the article that you wrote?
This is where you get a plug-in for yourself, by the way. Wink, wink. But I mean, are there places that, you know, are there websites that have information on this, or is there any place that people can turn to, or people who are practicing it well?
Yeah, definitely. I think a great place to turn to is people in the sphere. So advocates, people like Molly and so forth. And then from there, there's the w3.org. They have a great accessibility practices. Or there's digital.gov. They have a social media specific toolkit in terms of social media and accessibility. Because I know when you talk about ADA or WCAG, that's more for apps and websites. So social media, it's still a new field. We're still kind of grasping and learning more. So I think digital.gov is a good place to start.
And how can people find you if they want to send you to Barbados or?
They've got a great resort in Aruba, and Nichelle is dying to go.
Oh no, definitely. I'm down for any flight, anywhere. But if people want to find me, the best place is social media, and my handle is just Nichelle Robbie. And I'm always open to discussing this, and, you know, even getting feedback on ways to improve.
Well, thank you very much. You've given us a lot to think about, and you really opened our eyes to. And I hope some listeners got the idea here as well, because yeah, it's a whole new way of thinking. It shouldn't be a whole new way of thinking of things, but it really made us say, hey,
yeah, well, if you don't
sit up and take notice.
If you don't think about it, you don't think about it. So you have to, like, hear about it, and then you go, oh, I got it. Okay. So, you know, hey, we're just getting you.
You just blew my mind with that sentence. I don't even know.
I'm not even on TikTok. So I'm like, especially for us older generation, we got more catching up to do. The Gen Z, man, or millennials, they got it under control. Thank God for them. The world's going to be a better place.
Is that your editorial for today?
Yes, we're screwing things up, and they'll fix it. I got lots of faith in the younger generation.
Nichelle, thank you so much.
Thank you, Marc and Kathy. It's been great. And like you said, people need to hear about it first. So hopefully they'll hear about it first here.
I second that.
Have a great one.
Take care.
So that was interesting.
That was interesting.
And not only was it interesting, it was nice having you back
From my vacation.
from your self-imposed vacation.
I was on Capitol Hill doing very big things last week.
Oh,
I'll have you know.
wow. Humble brag. Man. Wow. Just work that right in.
Because it was all me, and I was tracking down some senators and Congress people.
Well, welcome back. We're glad to have you. It was much more fun.
Okay. Well, Off the Mark podcast is a presentation of On the Mark Media. Want help making your social content or website accessible? Send us an email at info@onthemark, and that's Mark with a C, onthemarkmedia.com. Until next week, I'm Kathy.
And I'm Mark.
And we're the Bickersteins.